and become more successful, and really change the score, because we know it's been a crazy 12 to 18 months. Um, it's but before we get into that, let me introduce Jared. So Jared is the chief appraiser at DataMaster, and he's also a veteran appraiser. He's been appraising for 27 years. Do I have that right, Jared?
Yep, a little over 27.
And so Jared works up in northern Utah, and mainly in northern Utah anyway. But he's also helps guide the product development at DataMaster, and bring features to DataMaster that we've never had before. So we're excited to have him. These are what we're going to talk about today, is a lot of the strategies that he's used to build his business, and to make sure that even in the off times and off years that he can still be successful. So with that, Jared, anything else you want to say about yourself before we get started?
Not necessarily about myself, but I did think it might be fun to just kind of let everybody know why we decided to do this series, and kind of where this came from out of some brainstorming that we had a couple of weeks ago. If you don't mind me sharing that a little bit, I think it'd be some good insight for these folks. Um, I I've been a longtime customer of DataMaster, almost my entire career. I've been using it, and one of the things that's always impressed me is that our founder Rick Liffrith was always trying to do what was right for the appraisers, um, and that was kind of a guiding principle. It is a guiding principle of ours. And as we were talking about the things that we could do to help the profession, to help the appraisers, this idea came up, that if there was a way that we could help them be more successful on a fundamental basis, getting more orders in the door, generating some additional income, then that would be one of the things that would be most helpful. And so that's kind of where this came from. That's what the idea. We're not going to talk in this series about how to use DataMaster, or some of the tips and tricks. We have other venues, other forums for that. This series is going to be all about how you can grow your business in these times. And so I just wanted everybody to kind of understand that that's where we're coming from.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. I neglected to mention that this is really more about building your own business than building the data master business, if you will. And the other note that I wanted to make before we get started is there is a Q&A window that you can type questions in. Those will come directly to Jared and me. And we will try to answer them as we go along, and we might answer them through question. Jared might answer them out loud, or we might type the answer in, but feel free to ask any questions as we go, and we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A as well, if we don't get to all of the questions while we're running with it. So thanks, Jared, for joining us. So like I was saying before, it's been kind of a crazy year to year and a half. Where do you see, or how has it been for you? Where do you see things going in the next little while?
Well,
And
yeah,
yeah, can you start with that?
yeah, I think since the interest rate started to increasing about a year and a half ago, um, the business, the volume has steadily declined in the lending world. I think that there's lots of indicators for that. I subscribe to a lot of different weekly and monthly newsletters and email blasts, and it seems like every day there's something that's showing that mortgage starts are down, that the market is changing. Along with that, we also had this, as the interest rates climbed, then the markets change. We have people that couldn't qualify for homes that they could have earlier. I remember October's figures. 53% nationally of the properties that were under contract failed and never closed. That's a giant number. There's all this kind of uncertainty, and then on top of that, in this whole time, we get the cyber attack stuff that happens. Rapatoni, they were some of you maybe from the Ohio area. I know from MLSs that interact with Rapatoni. Your business was severely interrupted, and some challenges there. Recently, ACI, First American, really that impacted ACI just yesterday. Big impacts there. Those cyber attacks, I don't think are going to stop. With that one, we're doing everything we can from the data master side to help those appraisers that were impacted by ACI. If you've had a challenge with that, I would just mention, give us a call. We'd be happy to kind of help you. We've got some things that we might be able to help you with. Marty, we've had the NAR lawsuit, had a judgment on it. That's throwing into, in my mind, I start wondering, where's my MLS data going? How is that going to impact? We've seen some rather large brokerage, MLS brokerages say they're not going to be part of NAR anymore. Does that mean they're not going to be part of my MLS? Where's my data going to come from? We've got USPAP changes, the recent changes in the ethics rule, a bunch of different things there. And then just on the horizon, like coming up, is going to be Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The report format change is coming this next year. So there's a lot of change in that area. It just never ends as far as the changes. And it seems like as appraisers, we're constantly having to adapt and find ways to continue to move forward. We're going to talk here in a minute a little bit about the business, what's been happening in my business, but with all of that chaos and uncertainty, I actually think that the future looks pretty bright for the appraising profession. I think that there's a great opportunity for appraisers who understand market analysis, who can appraise those properties that are a little bit more unique, an opportunity to expand your valuation services. Look at yourself not just as an appraiser, but as a provider of valuation services. And the thing that we just have to figure out is where that work is coming from and how I can put myself in a position to get the piece of that work. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I think the future is bright, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity coming for those that can adapt, and those that can provide meaningful analysis for their clients.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, is I think what we're going to see is a shift in for appraisers to becoming the analyst that lenders rely on. And I've seen a couple of chats in the chat box. Rob, DataMaster does work with ClickForms and a la mode. Just feel free to give us a call. We can get you set up and show you how that works. Actually, I put together a quick video yesterday about how you can select other form vendors, but I know there's a lot more to it than just you working with switching the form vendor in DataMaster. So give us a call. We'll keep our eye out for you today. And Taylor, thank you. We also agree, as you can tell, Jared's bullish on the appraisal market. So following up on that a little bit, how has your business been the past 18 months, Jared? Like, have you been Yeah. Have
Yeah.
orders been coming in? Have they been slow? What's going on?
So just so everybody understands, I'm in a kind of a unique situation where I have the data master work that I'm obligated to, and that I have a great opportunity with data master as the chief appraiser. But I also maintain a fee appraisal business. It's not a big shop. It's probably like most of you. I've got myself. I'm the only appraiser, and then my wife Lisa. She's the assistant, the boss, the scheduler. She does, all those kind of things. Make sure that she reviews my reports, helps me with them. But she's not an appraiser. She doesn't inspect property. She does not do, comp photos, any of those kind of things. And so we're kind of a one person shop with support, and that's really where the bulk of my income and my business come from. And so this past year, looking at the numbers through today, we got 9 orders today, and counting those 9 orders, we're off about 17 to 20%, right in that range for orders. But interestingly enough, our revenue is right about the same. The revenue is really not that much different. And so that seems probably a little bit odd to those that are on the call, and I can explain a little bit why that might be. We are going to do a poll though while we're doing that. Marty, I don't remember exactly how to launch the poll in here. With me sharing my screen, can you see how to get the poll going?
I'll get it up and going.
Okay. So one thing with this poll, you guys, we'd like to kind of see where your businesses have gone. All of this is anonymous. So even those of us running the meeting, we cannot see your answers, that the answer was you. So please just give us kind of an honest answer. We've got 2 polls we're going to do. They each have a couple of questions with them, but just kind of to help us make this more meaningful and address those comments. But so when I count the number of orders in my business, those are full, what I would consider a full order appraisal assignment order. I do not count. I do other services, like I do a lot of sketch work for real estate agents. I do a lot of consulting in my kind of outside the valuation, but in the consulting side with attorneys, with real estate brokers, with investors who are maybe looking at properties, and so those get invoiced kind of outside of my order system. If I put an order in my form vendor, that's what I track as far as the number of reports, appraisal reports that I'm doing. But and so when I look at our business as a whole, the revenue side is actually looking pretty decent, not bad at all, even though my specific appraisal orders are down a little bit. And that's one of the things that we're hoping that comes from today, that you can kind of see that it's not all just about getting a full GPAR order or a 1004 order, but it's about marketing yourself and the services, your skill set, your geographic competency that you have in your particular market. So go ahead. I can't see the poll. Is it up there for everybody?
Not yet. They changed how the polls work in Zoom, so I'm looking for it.
Okay. All right. Ryan shared with us that his lender work is down 90% over the last couple of years. Thanks, Ryan. That's kind of where I'm hearing a lot. We've been to a couple of trade shows this past year, and appraisers have told us that they're really down. They're really down quite a bit. And so um, so with that in in mind, we'll get this poll going and kind of get a grasp of everybody that's on the call and where we think the group is. But as we do that, let's continue to kind of talk about some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis to find success. One of the and what the plan is today is I'm going to give you we're going to give you two pieces of what we call collateral, but they're going to be two tools that you can use that we've created for you going forward, in the next couple of days, weeks, months, throughout the year, that I believe are very helpful for you. And those are for showing up and being on the call today. One of them is a PowerPoint that I use to present to groups when I go out and present. And I'm going to go through that PowerPoint so you understand the purpose behind it. And every time I present this particular PowerPoint, within a few days of me presenting it, I will see anywhere from 3 or 4 to as many as 5 or 6 opportunities for income that come out of it. Whether it's a consulting service, an appraisal, a sketch, something that kind of comes from this particular PowerPoint. And so it has a lot of value in it. I've refined it, taken a lot of time. It is kind of a little bit of my secret sauce. So some of you guys that are in Utah, I see you on the call. You're in my backyard, and I'm giving you what I do when I go to these lenders, or when I go out to do a presentation. The other thing that we're going to share with you, and the way that you're going to get these is within the next couple of days. Those that have attended, we're going to send you an email, and you'll have a link where you can download this stuff, or where you can use it. The other thing that we're going to share with you is, you can see on the screen this common question valuation questions. I have compiled a list of questions that are usually asked of me when I'm out presenting to real estate agents, to brokers, to loan officers, to attorneys. And I use this, I print this on cardstock, and I put my name and phone number on it, and this becomes my calling card. And I hand these out to everybody that's in the presentation. They can take notes, and then they can also jog their memory for any questions that they may have. And we're going to share with you this handout, this sheet, so that you can do the same with it. And what it does is, it's broken down these questions into groups, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of have some talking points when you go and visit with folks. It also, as you read down through these, when you get this, I would review this list and kind of look at it, and if there's some things in there that you're not super familiar with, or that you'd have a hard time answering those questions, I would bone up on that and get those questions, get the answers. You're really the expert in your marketplace, and that's what you want to do, is present yourself. You want to build yourself up as the expert. One of the things that I found is that there are appraisers that will go and do presentations, and they come back and they say, well, it was a waste of my time. I didn't get anything out of it. There was no follow-up, nobody engaged me to do any work. And in talking to those appraisers, a lot of them take kind of a negative view and what I would call a gossip view. Initially, what I find is going to happen, if you're not prepared, you don't have a handout like this, the very first question that comes when you're standing in front of 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 real estate agents, the first question that they ask you is, hey, I just had this appraisal and this appraiser came in low, and what can you do about it? And the appraiser will say, well, who was the appraiser? And they'll tell them who the appraiser was, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, that was a bad appraiser. You should be using me instead. Well, that really doesn't help your cause, and it doesn't help the agents at all either. It just kind of puts you in a light that's not as professional. So if you use this list, it kind of keeps those questions away, and helps that they immediately start reading down through these, and they see that you really have a great knowledge in the marketplace. They're going to ask you questions that are off of this sheet, and that are not those questions that get you going down the road of where we're kind of bashing each other. And so that's one of the reasons why I use this. So we're going to make this available to you. And this is, please don't share this outside. If you get it, you're happy to use it, but this is a thank you for coming and being here today.
Hey, Jared.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just an update on the polls. I think we're gonna have to send them out later.
Oh, okay.
Right now, but I'll make sure that the
Let me
link.
see. I might be able to do it.
It's up now.
Does everybody see those polls? If you guys could take just a couple of seconds and answer the few questions. There's like 4 questions, and I think when you get to the bottom, it just submits. The first one is on your business practice. How much time do you spend each week advertise or marketing your business? Advertising, building your business. Sorry, I'm just watching you reply. Thank you guys. This is really super helpful. I see that there's quite a few of you that do the sketch services that do a sketch. They're not a high dollar amount, but I'm surprised as to how many times I do a sketch and the next question is, well, what do you think the value is? What do you think I should list the property for? And that gives me the opportunity to maybe either say, well, that's kind of a different assignment, or I'd be happy to take a look at that with you. And so it's kind of a lead generation type of service that you can use. Tax appeal. Yeah, thanks for the chat there on the other list. I didn't want to put down too many things on the last question, or the question number 2 there. So
and just so everybody knows, just to reiterate, we are going to be sending this out and making this available to everybody who's attending today.
it looks like we've got quite a few that have answered. We'll give just one more second there. So the last question on there was about social media posts and blog posts, and what we really meant there is not posting on an appraiser website or an appraiser blog or social media, Facebook or whatever, but something where you have your own, or you're in another group, say with a real estate agent group. Recently I did a Facebook Live event where it was a real estate agent that wanted me to come to their Facebook Live. They asked me a bunch of questions about appraising. I don't remember how many they had on the call, but they have quite a group. I think there were 300-400 folks that were on that. that was really good exposure for me. Um, and so some of those things, agents who gain your trust are going to help you market. And what I found is that if I can help the loan officers, even though they can't directly engage me, if I can help the loan officers build their business, if I can help a real estate agent build their business, they're going to send me those referrals that they can. Um, and a lot of those referrals, they're the non-lender stuff. They're the estate planning. They're the listing. Maybe somebody wants to know how much it's going to cost to remodel their, or what the value would be after they remodel their kitchen. They're trying to make some decisions that way. And that most real estate agents have a really big Rolodex, a really big book of contacts and clients, and they work in teams, and they will give referrals to those that they trust in that team. And that's what you're trying to do, is to get into those teams. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. We'll keep that. I can't remember if it comes up. Share the results. Let's go ahead and do that. I don't know how it looks on theirs, on your side, but Marty, can you see the results?
Yes, sir. I've got them up right here. So it looks like, as far as question number one, time per week, it looks like 45% of you are spending 0 to 1 hour a week. 33% are spending 1 to 2, and then 22% are spending 2+ hours per week on building your business. So I think that that makes sense. And I think one of the things that that we're trying to put out there right now is to give you some tools that you can use, and some emails that you can send, that sort of thing, that make it a little easier to do some of that business building, some contacts that you might have. So on question number two, I know I saw a lot of stuff in the chats go through about what business you've got, but besides conventional lending, 81% do FHA or VA, 52% do sketch, 20 relocation, 38% property tax appeal, 38% FSBO, 50% litigation support, and then other is 23%. And like I said, go through the chat. There's a number of ideas there if you haven't done that, if you haven't seen them yet. 56% of you have a company website. And then
Marty, on that one,
yeah,
I don't know that I get a lot of business through my website, but what it does is it brings legitimacy to my business. It's kind of like being listed. Years ago, we would have yellow page or phone book ads or phone book listings, and somebody would look you up in the phone book, and if you had been in business long enough to be in the phone book, then that gave you a level of legitimacy with them. And I think that that's more what the websites are. I do not have on my website a place where someone can actually order an appraisal. I know others do. For me, I would rather them call me and let me talk to them about that order, instead of having it be an automated thing. So anyway, that just some comments on that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Taylor said that they've literally got people who tell them, "We chose you because you have a professional website."
Yeah.
And it's one of those things also that if it's the first step in search engine optimization, I won't get too deep into that, but if you don't have a website out there, nobody can find you through Google if they're Googling around, because they may not know the area, know appraisers in the area. So having a website is kind of a must. And there are resources out there that you can use to build a website fairly simply.
Maybe we can make that one of the topics
Yeah.
of one of the next ones in the series. So
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, but just some ideas out there. There's Wix.com. There's others like that you can build your own website, even if you're not a developer. And then the last question here is social media or blog, and the yeses were 18% and the nos were 82%. So, Jared, why do you think it's important to why do you want to ask this question? Why do you think it's important to have
Well,
social media blogs?
yeah, a couple of things. I think one of the things that keeps us from communicating, there's two things I think that really stop somebody from doing a blog or putting some information out there. Number one is that maybe you're not so confident in what you're going to be putting out there, and you don't want somebody to kind of slam on it or be negative. And then the other is that just what should I blog about? Like what are the things that we should be out there talking about? And but what happens when you have a blog, especially if a real estate agent is linked to it, it gives you just a better exposure within the marketplace that you're working in. And there's a few of them that I like to participate in. There's in my area, there's some green, there's some groups that focus on green living, a lot of solar type of stuff, which I specialize in. And so I will comment on things that are going on there, and it keeps me in the conversation. It keeps my name up at the top of the pages. And so there's a lot of value that comes in that. I think it's not for the light of heart, and it's not something that you can just jump into without really putting some thought into it. And later, I think that this is one area, Marty, also that we can help by providing some content as well, for folks to be able to use in their blogging.
Sure. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Okay. So Jared, to get us back on track, sorry about the delay with the polling. But Jared, you mentioned earlier that you have a presentation that you give to non-appraisers, so maybe brokers, MLSs. Can you give us a insight into how you use this? Are you sending it out in an email to them? How are you getting in front of these people to give this presentation, and then maybe walk through the presentation a little bit for us?
Yeah, thanks, Marty. So I have found that there's a lot of opportunity for you to share, to present in front of a group of real estate agents, a group of attorneys, a group of loan officers, lenders, and so I've been doing that for quite a while, and usually they'll tell me that they have a broker meeting every Tuesday or every Thursday, whenever it is, and that they give me 20 minutes. And I usually won't go into a 20-minute scenario. I'd like them to have at least an hour, and I want them to put me last on the agenda. So those are two key things. I want to be last, and I want a little bit more than 20-30 minutes. At least 45 minutes to an hour. And then I ask the broker if there's anything specific that they want me to talk about, that they're having a challenge within their particular area, and I come prepared for that. Brokers and lenders are always looking for content for these types of meetings. The problem comes in when an appraiser goes and they start telling them the wrong things. They start giving them misinformation. And so I'm going to share with you this PowerPoint that I use. And it's designed for real estate agents, brokers, and attorneys, loan officers and attorneys who don't really understand what we do as appraisers. There's a lot of the public that just thinks that we spend 20 minutes in somebody's home, and then we pick a number out of the air and we put it in a fancy report that's 30 or 40 pages, and we get paid the big bucks to do it. And so I like this presentation. You're going to see that it's going to start with, it's very simple, has a few components in it, but it really addresses some very specific challenges and problems that that the agents and the lenders have. So there's usually a section in the very beginning. I just introduce myself, kind of talk about how long I've been in the business, the areas that I work, that I'm grateful for the broker that has invited me to be there. And then I talk a little bit about communication. This is a really good way to start off and say, and this slide, pretty self-explanatory. Communication between the agents, appraisers, property owners is really critical. There's a slide that comes later on when we talk about what kind of things we can communicate with. You know, I at this point, I really kind of talk about appraisal independence and how we have to be careful about how we talk. But there's some critical things that I need from agents in my market. So here's some of those things that we can talk about. How did you price the property? What is the listing and sales history? How, you know, what kind of things did you do? I can look and see when the price reductions occurred and, you know, how they made that, but I want them to kind of tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the days on market, your showings, your open houses, how many showed up, what did people say when they got there? What did they think about the property? What are some things that the owners think are very special about the property? What are some improvements that have been made? What are specifically, you know, updating and remodeling? I may be able to see it, but I might not be able to see some of the things that they've done. Are there any new energy efficient features that you can tell me about? These are all things that don't have anything to do with pressuring us to hit a particular value or a particular price, but are very relevant things that we should be able to communicate with the broker, especially this first one on how you price the property. I always talk about this one because you're going to see later on that this kind of sets up for the conclusion of this PowerPoint. Then I will usually throw in a market update. Now, you can kind of skip this if you want to. We just put in some slides here these are some national numbers from the Federal Reserve on active listings, etc. I will usually go into my MLS, and my MLS has some really nice statistics, and I'll throw those in here if the broker wants me to. If not, sometimes I skip this part, but I put in a few statistics on what's happening in the market place, and kind of just go through those. I don't spend a lot of time on that. This is the part that's kind of the part that I like to focus on with this particular group. And these are going to be basic things for you. You're going to understand them. And it helps you, it lets you kind of shine a little bit as the appraiser, as the valuation professional. So I go through the valuation process. This comes directly from the 15-hour USPAP course. And we're going to talk about each of these different 6 steps. And generally what ends up happening once we talk about this is the agents say, oh, I had no idea that that's what you had to do. Or a loan officer says, oh, you're kidding. I didn't know that you had to do that. Or that makes sense now. For example, I'll talk about how in the valuation process, defining the problem is the very first step. We have to identify who the client is, who the intended user, the intended use, identify the type and definition of value. These are right out of USPAP, you guys. The effective date of the opinion of value, identify those relevant characteristics of the property. I'll stop right here and I'll say, this is what I need you to help me with as a real estate agent. This is where you can help me. What are those things that you thought were important when you priced the property? Now, the market may have decided something different. It could have been wrong. I don't necessarily talk to them about that in this big group, but on a one-on-one basis, we might say, well, you know, that characteristic, I didn't find that there was any statistical value in it, or I couldn't prove that there was any additional value. But they see that the effort that we have to do. And then, of course, if there are any assignment conditions, This step, when I'm talking to loan officers and I talk to them about what the intended use and the intended client, the client and the intended user is, this is where we get into the discussion about, they asked me to do it conventional. Now they want me to flip it to FHA. Why does that have to become a new report? It's because of this defining the very first step, defining the problem. So it helps them understand when they say, well, can't you just change this? And the answer is no, I really can't. And this is the reason. And so I like to spend a few minutes here. This is maybe 5 to 7 minutes of the presentation is in this part. You're going to see how this builds and it sets it up. Then I talk a little bit about defining the scope of work. Like, what is it in the scope of work? It's my responsibility to decide that based on the assignment parameters. Once I have figured out the highest and best use as part of that, then I will decide what data I need to collect. So I'll do it the market, then I have to do a market analysis, that highest and best use analysis. Once we've done that, step number 4 is figuring out which approaches to value are most important. We have 3 approaches to value. I'll explain that to the audience, to the group. We have this cost approach, we have the sales comparison approach, we have the income approach. Fannie and Freddie will only lend on the sales comparison approach. That's why if I'm talking to some builders, why the cost approach, I'm going to do that. But really, we have to have sales in order to in our report, and that's where we have to put the main focus of our final opinion of value, our reconciled opinion of value. That helps those builder groups understand cost doesn't always translate into value. And it also sets up for what's coming next in the meeting. The 5th step is that reconciliation of not only all the individual approaches to value, but reconciling together quality and quantity of data. And then finally, the report itself and finalizing that report. And by the time you get through this process with them, they're like, wow, I didn't understand that it was that intent, that there was that much that went into it. And so this kind of helps you walk right down through that and build your profession. The next thing that I love to do is talk about the difference between price, cost, and market value. And there's a reason for this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to define price and cost. Now, these come right from the Appraisal of Real Estate 15th edition. And we put those up on. We talk about price as the amount of a particular purchaser agrees to pay and a particular seller agrees to accept under circumstances surrounding the transaction. Price is an accomplished fact. Okay, that this property sold for this price on this day. That's a fact. And then this is the definition for cost. The total dollar expenditure for an improvement structure. It applies to production, not to exchange. Price is that exchange element. Appraisers distinguish among direct cost, indirect, and the cost of entrepreneurial coordination. That helps them understand where these 2 elements are. Why is my list price, not market value type of thing? And then the next slide talks about the market value. It represents the monetary worth of a property, goods, or services to buyers and sellers at any given time. It's the present worth of future benefits that accrue or result from real property ownership. And then we can talk about, we can expand a little bit upon that. And then I tell them that there's 14 different definitions of market value, but the only one that we really care about today is the one that we use when we're doing the appraisal for the purchase or the refinance, whatever group I happen to be talking to, right? And this is the definition of market value. Each of you certify, and I'll even tell them, I certify to this value every time I complete and do a report. And it has 5 major components. Market value is the most probable price in which A property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions requisite to a fair sale. The buyer and seller each acting prudently, knowledgeably, and assuming that price is not affected by undue stimulus. And then these 5 things have to all happen. We have to have buyers and sellers that are typically motivated. Both parties are well informed or well advised, acting in what he or she considers his or her own best interest. A reasonable time is allowed for exposure. Payments made in terms of cash in US dollars, and the price doesn't represent normal. The price represents normal consideration for properties sold unaffected by special or creative financing or concessions granted. On this concessions one, I usually will talk about the fact that that's why, as an appraiser, we may make a negative adjustment for the concessions that were paid on a comparable. It's because that's required in the definition, in our assignment, our scope of work. Oh, I had no idea. The real estate agents will say, I had no idea that that's what you're. So we're helping inform them about what we need to do. Buyers and sellers equally motivated. I'll talk a little bit about that. One example I love to give is you may have, somebody that wants to buy a house, wants to be closer to work, and so they're paying a little bit more, maybe a premium for that property above list price, so that they can be a little bit closer, maybe right next to their work, or maybe next to another family member. And maybe they're not paying market value, but that difference is value in use. So I might talk a little bit about value in use at this point. Number 2, parties being well informed and well advised. This is where I talk about how the real estate agent has such a great responsibility in the process for pricing the property correctly. If they don't price the property correctly or advise their client, I can't checkbox yes to number 2. And my opinion of value may be different than what they were expecting because of that. And so I'll go down through each of these and why they're each very important. Now, I know that this is a lot for you guys to be getting today, and maybe some of you are frantically taking some notes. We're going to run through this whole thing again. Marty, what day is it? The 5th of January? Is that right?
Yeah, we'll do it again January 5th.
So
but we'll also make this available to everybody who's
on the call.
So you don't have to take down all the notes. We will. It's a lot to jot down. So yeah, we'll make it available to everyone.
So I like to spend some time right here in the presentation, because the next thing that I say to them is this is kind of what it looks like pictorially. So you have these this ring of well-informed sellers, and the typically motivated buyers and sellers. Terms of US dollars, no creative financing, reasonable exposure time. And it's my job to decide reasonable exposure time, right? It may be 3 months, it may be 36 hours, it may be 18 months. That's part of our job, and why USPAP requires us to identify the exposure time in every report that we do. Well, where all of these things intersect is where market value lies. And this helps them kind of understand that each of these components, if I have a situation where maybe median concessions for this particular market are $5,000, and in my transaction they're paying $25,000. Ooh, maybe that circle there doesn't exist. Sale price might not be equal to market value, or contract price might not be equal to market value. And I'll share with them that if you have an agent that didn't price the property doing a CMA or looking at the market, and they just said, well, the seller owed this much on it, I needed 6% commission, and so we priced it here. Well, now this circle doesn't match. This circle doesn't apply. We don't have well-informed buyers and sellers. Or maybe our motivation is out. So if one of these 5 is missing, we may not have market value. That contract may not represent market value. And I'll talk to them about this just this way. And then what I say is, I'm going to tell you what to do if the opinion of value comes back different than your purchase price or different than what you expected. And then I say, but I'm going to wait till the end. So I have them kind of wait till the end. And I'll kind of summarize this a little bit. We talk about relevant characteristics. What is important about the property? I kind of segue a little bit here and I say, I'm going to, go into the marketplace. And what appraisers do is we don't search by price per square foot or list price or sold price. We look at the relevant characteristics of the comparable. We need to ask ourselves questions. Who are my typical buyers? Not necessarily names of who they are, but what do they do? How are they going to use this house? What is important about this property that they find that the market sees value in? Is it horse property? You can look at all these different things. You can add some to it if you want that are relevant to your area. Maybe waterfront property, you need to add that into here. Golf course I put in here. And then we come back. What is it? And this is kind of where where I share with them the secret to what to do if the opinion of value is different than purchase price. I say, rather than give me a bunch of comparables that I probably have already seen, that I've already looked at, instead of throwing a bunch of comparables at me, you need to ask the appraiser this question. And some of you may feel a little uncomfortable with this, but I'm telling you that this will build you a big business. And you just throw this question out there. This is what a real estate agent or a loan officer needs to ask me if my opinion of value is different. And hopefully you've already addressed this within your report. But what is it about my transaction that doesn't meet, Mr. Appraiser, Mrs. Appraiser, your definition of market value? I had equally motivated and equally typically motivated buyers and sellers. They were well informed. We did our job when we priced it. It was on the market for the normal marketing time, reasonable marketing time. We don't have creative financing. We are in terms of US dollars. If all 5 of those were met, Mr. Appraiser, what is it about my transaction that doesn't meet this definition of market value? And I'll tell you that that when I present this, it really builds the credibility. When I have an assignment that is different than purchase price, in my assignment before I finish that report, I'm going to talk about these 5 elements and which one was not met. Maybe they didn't price it right. Maybe it was 250 square foot smaller than what the list price was, so nobody's well informed anymore. Maybe the concessions were off. Maybe all of the comparables in the CMA that they sent me were all horse property and mine was not. Now I have something that I can share with them. The last part of this is I go into a little bit more detail on what a comparable is. This comes right out of the Fannie Mae Selling Guide. And then I leave some time for questions and answers. Now we're gonna share with you a few other PowerPoints like this in the next series that you can use to present. This is the one that I like to start off with a broker. It builds a lot of credibility for me when I'm presenting it, and builds a lot of trust in the profession. It also is fundamental appraisal principles, things that you're very familiar with, and will set you up as the expert. And so we're going to share this with you. You'll be able to get the link to this in the email that we send out, the follow-up email. Marty, we're just about out of time. What are some questions that we've got that kind of came up through that?
Yeah, so there's one question I think that we didn't address yet, and it's, do you hire out as an expert witness for court testimony? And if so, did you take a class or just rely on your accumulated knowledge?
Joe, good question. Yes, I do, and yes, I have. There are several really good classes that are available for litigation. They are different assignments as an expert witness. The ones that, frankly, that I recommend are the Appraisal Institute when you're getting into the litigation side. They're a little bit more detailed, and you're really anyway, to me, those are the best classes. I've had several different ones. But yeah, you want to be prepared for that for sure. Great question, Joe.
Yeah, and we can put together, sorry, real quick, we could put together a list of some classes and send that out too. I love this, Ryan. Thank you for sharing. The ASA offers some seat classes.
Yep.
Very good. Yeah, we'll put together a list of some of these classes and send that out as well.
Yeah. Corey had something about that last slide. Yeah, I'd be happy to repeat that, Corey, for you. This is kind of the key. It feels a little bit like you're throwing your peers under the bus, frankly. And it's going to separate you from those appraisers who are just filling out the form. And I know you guys that are on the call with us today, you're those that are out there and really want to build your business and have public trust, build credibility. And so this seems a little bit like we're throwing each other under the bus, but really the question that the real estate agent or the loan officer should ask, in a reconsideration of value scenario, you're going to say, you usually get 3 comparables, and those 3 comparables are nothing like the subject. Let's be honest with ourselves. The only thing that's similar is that the purchase price or the sale price of those equals the purchase price of the contract. Nothing else seems to be the same. Well, that's useless. That reconsideration of value is really useless. What they really need to be asking the appraiser when it didn't meet when it didn't meet purchase prices, what is it about this whole transaction that doesn't meet the definition of market value? I don't know if very many of you remember, but about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, Scott Reuter from Fannie Mae or from Freddie Mac and Lyle Radke both put out some messaging about market value. They were kind of frustrated that all these appraisals were coming in below purchase price as the market was really escalating. And essentially what those messages said was that if all 5 of these are met, purchase price is market value at that particular point in time. And that's really what this definition of market value says, is that if everything is truly met, then purchase price is market value. And so a lot of times when I disagree with purchase price, or my data shows that I don't agree with purchase price, it's somewhere within one of these 5 elements. And usually it's in the well-informed buyers and sellers or the concessions and creative market side. I find that agents don't price properly, and that that is what leads to the problem in the beginning. And that's what I talk about. So hopefully, Corey, that helped. I'm going to run through this again, and of course, you're going to have the recording also. So thank you, guys. Any other questions there that are hanging out? You guys, I am super excited about this next coming year. I think that interest rates are showing a little bit of sign of dropping. Don't be fooled by the fact that when interest rates go, you get a little uptick in your business. Don't stop. Go out and keep doing your marketing. Do these presentations. Get the word out that you're the professional. Figure out what you like to specialize in.
Yeah. No, I think we've answered all the questions that I've seen out there. Jared, I wanted to say thank you. And so this is the business side of me. So if if you're not a DataMaster user, we'd love to have you use DataMaster. We are offering a special discount for anybody who was on the webinar today. So we'll send that out. But essentially, you get DataMaster for just about half price for 2 months. And so we'll send that link out so you can sign up there. But I wanted to say thank you to Jared and thanks for everybody else who's here. Wishing you a happy holidays. Hopefully, yeah, Ryan, great tip there. And yeah, we'll hopefully we'll be working with you in the next few months. We've got our next in this series. We're going to talk about ANSI standards and ANSI measurements on February 23rd. So mark your calendars. You'll get some invitations for that too. But we'd also love to hear what is important to all of you. So feel free to reach out and we can maybe get that on the docket for the rest of the year too. So.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I guess the last thing I can say is happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody, and hope you have a good one.